please.
Councilmember Bertani?
Here.
Councilmember Moy?
Here.
Councilmember Panduro?
Here.
Councilmember Tim?
Here.
Councilmember Thomason?
Here.
Vice Mayor Vaccaro?
Here.
And Mayor Price?
Here. And would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You want me to start with public comments?
If you would, please, Madam Clerk.
Okay. Persons wishing to address the City Council on subjects on the agenda may do so at this time. The Council cannot discuss or take action on matters not on the agenda for this meeting. To speak on an agenda item, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 on your phone to request to speak. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. And Brian, if you'll let us know if anyone would like to speak.
Okay. Thank you. We'll begin the meeting then, please.
Item 1 is Fairfield Forward 2050 General Plan Update Project. And our speakers are Dave Feinstein and Jesse Hernandez, and they'll introduce everybody.
Yes, hello. Good evening, Mayor Price, members of the City Council. I'm Dave Feinstein, the city's Planning Division Manager. And tonight will be another in a series of meetings that we've held with the City Council regarding the city's general plan update. We've held probably 3 or 4 meetings over the last year since we began this project. And the most recent meeting that we had with the City Council was in November, where the council was given a presentation by our project consultants regarding alternatives for our general plan, looking at different ways that the city can grow and develop over the next 30 years. At that meeting, we heard public comment and on a range of issues with a lot of discussion about the future for the Sassoon Valley area. And we heard a little comment from the City Council, but there was general direction at the end of that meeting that there's a lot of meaty topics here to discuss, including the Sassoon Valley area and how the city will grow and develop across the city. And there was direction given that we really should slow this discussion of the alternatives down rather than to try to take the whole of the city in one meeting, and particularly trying to do it as we did as a part of a regular city council meeting. The feeling was it's best if we slow this down, break it out over a series of workshops, and allow the council to really digest the material and have a more robust discussion on the topic. There was also direction given that we should be doing more outreach to the public on, and particularly those who are affected by the particular alternatives that are presented. So tonight, you will hear a presentation from our project consultants, Diet and Bhatia. The presentation will be given by Allison Moore, who you're familiar with, has given several presentations to you, including the November presentation. We're going to talk about some of the outreach that we've done and that we are continuing to do. And we're also going to talk a little bit of background, just a little refresher, so that both the council and any members of the audience have a good set of the context for why we're looking at different issues and how you might want to think about different issues, how some decisions will be made about how much housing we might need or how many jobs we're trying to achieve. And then we're going to focus tonight on the central part of the city. So tonight we'll focus on areas like North Texas Street, the mall area, our heart of Fairfield, those kinds of topics. Other areas, Cordelia, some of the more peripheral parts of the city, Sassoon Valley, will come back over our next set of workshops in March and April. And so Allison will talk to you about the schedule both for those upcoming workshops as well as looking down the road at the rest of this project. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to Allison. And I don't necessarily, I can't see her on my screen, but I think she's been promoted. So
yes. Hello, everyone. Council members, Mayor, it's great to see you again.
Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
All right. So yes, as Dave mentioned, tonight we're going to use this first study session to get reacquainted with Fairfield Forward 2050, and then hear from you about some direction on potential areas of change in a more focused area this time around. So tonight I'll just give a little bit of background, talk about outreach, and then get into a discussion of concepts that we are seeking your feedback on. I'll give my presentation and then I'll stop, and then perhaps we can open it up to public comment, and then we can go back into discussion like we did at the November meeting, if that's amenable.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Great. Yes, so as Dave mentioned, this represents the first of 3 scheduled study sessions, which we've broken up by area of potential change for discussion. At this meeting, we're hoping to get your recommendations for areas in Central Fairfield. At the next, we'll discuss the general Cordelia Junction area, potential areas for new neighborhoods and improving connections in the city. And then at the final meeting, we'll report back on the outreach that we have conducted with Sassoon Valley stakeholders and property owners and ask for guidance in this particular area. And at the conclusion of these study sessions, we'll also summarize what we heard at the prior ones and then combine concepts and direction about what you liked or what you did want to see in the preferred alternative. And that will form the basis of the full plan update and the foundation for policy direction and more specific analysis later on. So just a bit of background. To recap, we are in the alternatives phase in which we are exploring different pathways forward to achieving Fairfield's growth and preservation and also meeting community goals. We completed the initial phase of the project where we explored existing conditions and did a deep dive on the community's vision and priorities in phase 1. That culminated in the vision and guiding principles document that is available at the project's website, fairfieldforward.com. And then we are here in the alternatives and evaluation with the preferred alternative in hand. We'll then start developing the general plan after that. Simultaneously occurring are the climate action plan and housing element. And then just did want to touch on outreach activities. So we did do a very comprehensive range of community outreach related to visioning, including 2 community workshops, a community survey, stakeholder interviews, youth outreach with FSU SD students, some GPAC meetings, that's our General Plan Advisory Committee members, some initial visioning sessions, and various go-to outreach. And then, as I mentioned, led to the development of the vision and guiding principles. And then in this second phase of the project, we also had a robust level of participation. We had various go-to outreach events. We had social media. We had a digital billboard, a water bill insert that promoted the survey link among City of Fairfield residents. We did a video, an explanatory video in 3 languages. And then we also had comment forms available about the alternatives on the website as well. So what have we done since then? We have stayed busy. So after the November 2nd meeting, we continued our outreach. Our GPAC member, Noah Rumboa, has been instrumental in engaging with Fairfield youth, which we know is a key audience as they will be aging into this plan. He engaged with over 115 students at Rodriguez High School who developed presentations about issues in Fairfield that they cared about. The team, including our subconsultant Diversity RD Global, went to pop-up events at Liberty Church and supported a multicultural food fair in which engagement with Latino and Filipino community members was prioritized. And then while our engagement has been robust in the city of Fairfield itself, we heard at the November 2nd meeting that we needed to do more to reach people in the county. And we have begun to meet with some of these key stakeholders. We met with the Orderly Growth Committee and some of their affiliates, but we have more planned. We have other stakeholders in Sassoon Valley that we are meeting with, additional property owner meetings, and then we will be hosting some group discussions for property owners north of I-80 and south of I-80. And those will be upcoming in the month ahead. Oops. So picking off where we left off, the stage of the project that we were at last time, just a refresher, alternatives are different options for achieving growth and priorities that we use to help the community evaluate trade-offs. They are conceptual, they represent a 10,000-foot view of a direction. They're also a requirement of the environmental impact report, which must consider a no project alternative or what might happen if the existing general plan were to continue along in its current state. We looked at alternatives kind of wholesale last time, a collection of concepts presented in each of those alternatives. But what we'll do tonight is consider the concepts and areas of change more individually at these study sessions, mixing and matching the ones that are preferred into our preferred alternative. So a refresher too on how these areas of change were developed. As part of existing conditions, we did an analysis of vacant and underutilized land. Underutilized land meaning areas where the value of the underlying land itself may be more than the building and where a property owner may be incentivized to redevelop. Just because these sites have been identified as opportunity sites and opportunity areas does not mean that development or redevelopment will definitively happen. It would be up to the discretion of the property owner to do that. So these opportunity areas can kind of help us think about where potential change might occur, where there might be new land uses, where there might be more intense land uses if uses are desired that already exist there. So that's where we're going to kind of guide the discussion tonight, like these areas in red, what do we want to happen in those areas? And these opportunity areas too will help us address the following questions. These are the questions that we have to ask ourselves when we are considering what we want in our preferred alternative that will form the basis of the plan. Where should housing go and what type is the right balance for Fairfield? Is it more single family? Is it more multifamily? And where does it go? How are we simultaneously planning for jobs growth and what types of jobs is Fairfield seeking to attract? How can we balance housing, jobs, and agriculture? How can we better connect Fairfield's different neighborhoods, particularly Cordelia and Central Fairfield? How can we work to add new amenities, parks, restaurants, community centers, activities for youth? And then what are the best ways that we can help curb climate change? So we're also planning for growth and change so we can do it in an orderly and intentional fashion. Fairfield needs to plan both for people who are moving here and for people who are already here and have been here a long time. This means thinking thoughtfully about housing supply, which helps us to address affordability issues, thinking about the right types of housing to help us meet the needs of Fairfield's diverse population, single and multifamily, a range of incomes, family types and sizes, owning or renting, all components to consider. Overall development proposed is modest in the span of 30 years, particularly when we consider that there are over 8,000 units in the pipeline already. Based on Fairfield's regional housing need allocation number, we feel it's appropriate to target around 10,000 to 13,000 units over the next 30 years, which is inclusive of that pipeline growth. And I will note that that differs just a little bit from the number presented in the market analysis, which presented a range of 7,500 to 10,000 units, but that did not account for all of the pipeline development, just those in the projects that have been active just in the past few years. There's also need to plan for jobs of the future. So planning for jobs growth has the benefit of reducing vehicles miles traveled, improving quality of life and economic well-being, and many other pluses. Jobs growth can also help create a positive fiscal impact, so the city has funds for infrastructure, landscaping, maintenance, and other improvements that we've heard that people desire in the city. And the ranges for growth there that were in the market analysis included 2.7 to 11.1 million square feet of industrial uses, 1.9 to 2.5 million square feet of office uses, and then a smaller amount, less than 1 million square feet in retail uses. So with that context in mind, tonight we'd like to discuss your thoughts on 3 areas of potential change. The first would be how to supplement downtown and the planning that's already happening there. Solano Town Center and North Texas Street. The options put forward for these areas draw from the prior alternatives presented at the November 2nd meeting. I did just want to emphasize this will not be the case for when we get to discussion of Suisun Valley in March or April, rather, as we heard from community members who spoke at that event that what was represented was not aligned with their vision. So those alternatives may be slightly different in April. So the first area, I'll just run through these quickly so we can get through to public comment, but downtown. So Fairfield's downtown has already been recognized for its potential in the heart of Fairfield's specific plan. And the general plan update and talking about alternatives represents the chance to take a closer look at how the plan can achieve its goals, how the general plan can help support the specific plan goals, or where we might build upon it. Alternative 1 did not have any change in this area. It kept the area largely as is, but did want to just present Alternative 2, which focuses more housing, high density housing around the transportation center and a node just to the south here. And then this option 2 does seek to connect this area with a more mixed use development at the elbow of Texas Street to better connect to Suisun City. And then Alternative 3 creates more of a mixed use center around the existing transportation center, creating a transit oriented node more in this area. So there would be more housing in Alternative 2 here, but likely more non-residential and residential in this alternative here. And then what we heard from the community for support of downtown, 28% of our survey takers, that's almost 400 survey takers, indicated a preference for Alternative 2, focusing on transit-oriented development there. 26% chose Alternative 3, which includes the mixed-use node. At the alternatives workshop that we had, there was a high level of support for the mixed-use node concept, locating housing and commercial or office in closer proximity, and that included the node downtown. When we presented this to our GPAC members, they all emphasized just how important it was that downtown redevelop and what a key role the heart of Fairfield plays in revitalization of this area. And then when we met with the Planning Commission in October, we heard most support for Alternative 2, with some of the aspects of Alternative 3, including that mixed use node. And then one Planning Commission member who did want to keep the area as is and see how it developed. The Solano Town Center. It's important to consider what will happen in this area because market trends have estimated that 25% of US malls are projected to close within the next 5 years. So in considering that, what do we want this area to be? Solano Town Center is still a community attraction, but there is potential for redevelopment into a vibrant mixed-use center in the future. Alternative 1 keeps the area as is with minimal change. Alternative 2 includes a portion of the mall that could redevelop as mixed use with retail and housing along Pennsylvania Avenue. And then Alternative 3 represents the largest amount of change. And this could include higher medium density housing, a community park, a community center for youth, or a jobs training center, potential logistics uses or other jobs supporting uses in this area as well. And then we heard that 42% of survey takers said it should remain as is, but 37% plus another 3% who left an other comment did desire to see the mall undergo some major type of transformation. Among our youth respondents, over half desired major transformation. 37% of our youth respondents under 18 preferred the mall remain the same or incorporate some experiential retail. At the workshop, mall redevelopment was one of the most popular concepts among workshop participants. And then at the Planning Commission, there was also support for this alternative, the larger amount of change. And then finally, North Texas Street. So North Texas currently is primarily a street that is oriented around driving, though there are a number of restaurants and stores, both small and local. And these stores and businesses are set back behind large parking lots on the street. The first alternative has a limited amount of change on this corridor. Alternative 2 includes major transformation, including residential, commercial, and community service uses in mixed-use development along North Texas. And then this level, an increase in population could potentially support a bus rapid transit line that would connect West Texas to the downtown area and the train stations and the transportation center. And then alternative 3 is more limited than alternative 2 and includes nodes of activity, though some mixed use development, but less than alternative 2 there. This was an area where there was a pretty clear amount of support for major redevelopment as shown in alternative 2. Public realm improvements as a means to improve connectivity. So that includes sidewalks, shade, other sidewalk furniture, making it more pleasant along these corridors was another highly rated priority. This was another one of our most popular concepts among workshop attendees. Our GPAC was in support for major redevelopment and the bus rapid transit line, but noted that it is important to improve transit in concert with new development. So those things occurring at the same time. And then at our Planning Commission meeting, there was a slight preference for alternative 2, the larger amount of change, though some questioned how much development should actually be occurring there. So maybe some in between alternatives 2 and alternatives 3. So with that, I will go back to the beginning here. And if there are any public comments at this time, I'll pause the presentation here before our discussion. If there are any questions about what I presented so far too, I'm happy to answer those at the moment.
Okay, looks like we have
no comments or questions, colleagues? Okay, go ahead, Brian. Okay, thank you, Brian.
So it looks like Nora may have dropped out of the meeting. So maybe she'll try to come back in. But in the meantime, I would look to council. Are there questions or thoughts, or would you like Allison to maybe go section by section to start, facilitating the council conversation in that way?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would like us to go piece by piece because they're all different, and we don't want to mess up the alternatives, if you don't mind.
No, that's a good suggestion, Councilwoman Moy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Anybody want to lead off?
Allison, you maybe want to go to the first section and kind of help walk us through that again?
Sure thing. So the first area where we are seeking your guidance, that's your vision for the area, what you would like to see here, is in support of downtown Fairfield. What changes might you want to see in this area to support the vision of the heart of Fairfield, to have a vibrant mixed-use area with thriving businesses where that is a destination. And some of the things we might consider here is how much housing should we plan for here? What types of housing are important to plan for here? How does what we do in support of downtown Fairfield help support connectivity to the rest of the city? What other things might the general plan incorporate to help the heart of Fairfield achieve its goals?
So I'll lead off there, Mayor, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, please.
So I like the higher density, and I kind of like a mixture of 2 and 3. Certainly higher density around the train station, but I like this model. I like the train station, that we can take use of those transit dollars. So that would be something that I would like to look forward for, along with what's going on already with the Heart of Fairfield plan. But if we can get some high density infill in there, that'd be something that I would be in favor of. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Councilmember Tani, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilman Tonneson 100%. I like a hybrid of alternatives 2 and 3. And if you could, can you drill down a little bit on what a mixed use node would look like?
Yeah, so the main difference between 2 and 3 here in this area would have more commercial or non-residential use occurring at the same time as housing. That could be within the same site. It could be what's known as horizontal mixed use, where there could be nodes of commercial and then residential on either side. But really the idea of a node is that you have everything that you need in walking distance. So there is that consideration of a node there. And then alternative 2 instead just focuses mostly higher density housing around the transportation center there.
So I definitely think that a hybrid of alternatives for 2 and 3 would be great. And then could a node look like the node in Emeryville? I mean, is that kind of is that what you're saying is that what you're envisioning when you mentioned like a mixed use node?
Yes, it could look like an Emeryville, but I think the Emeryville example, are you talking about Bay Street, Councilwoman Bertani?
Yeah, I'm talking about the mixed use node in Emeryville, where there's shops on the bottom, residential on top, and no vacancies because it's sold out. And everything is in walking distance, and it's pretty, it's safe, relatively, and it looks really, really good. So I'm wondering if our mixed use node could contemplate, obviously we're not that, but because we're better, but something that looks like that, something that looks like that, because it's very attractive. And like I said, there are no vacancies over there.
Yeah, Councilmember Bertoni, this is Rajiv Pati. I worked with Allison. You've seen me here before.
Hi.
Emeryville is a great model. It's pretty intense though. And Emeryville doesn't have a downtown. So that functions in effect as a downtown for Emeryville as well as the surrounding areas. So that kind of a scale may be appropriate for like the town center. So on the town center, or, we have a downtown here as well. So we want to reinforce that as well. So this would be mixed use, but not the same scale of retail, because we don't want to take away from the other destinations that we have. But in terms of its energy, in terms of its, scale and so on, and the kind of public, improvements out there, yes, yeah.
Yeah, I know my colleagues have heard me harp on this before, but, I grew up in Oakland. And I remember when Emeryville was a ghost town, there was literally zero commercial activity, and it was a scary place to actually go into. I think Freddie Krueger used to live there, so now it is a bustling, robust commercial it's a robust commercial piece of real estate. And so I'm just hoping that, we can figure out, because I think you make a good point, we have multiple destinations, Emeryville does not. So I totally get that. But how can we, do a plan where our, destinations feed into each other rather than detract from each other?
Okay. Other comments, colleagues?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman White, please.
Thank you. I also like a blend of alternative 2 and 3. I do think it's important that we have a connection to Suisun City as well as we can. And I do like the mixed use node as we see in alternative 3. And I think we've learned, this is much more extreme, but out in Cordelia, we get a lot of concerns about not having, coffee shops, those kind of things around, and places to go and clean their clothes and, the whole thing. And nice restaurants, although they do have nice restaurants out in the area. Anyway, I think that we have to make sure, especially now, with the younger generations that we hope that will move into these areas, we'll want to make sure that we give them everything that they need there. Whatever it is, going down to plug their, maybe at that time you don't plug computers in anymore, but whatever, to go down and gather together and, that's kind of mixed use that I think that we want to look at when we put the high density around it. So I think that's really cool. And I do agree with Pam. We want something like that. And I think that we have a really big option to do that really in the downtown and maybe more the town center because that has pretty easy on and off. I don't really like the off ramp there, but for people to come in and out. And Interstate 80 goes right by Emeryville, and it's very easy to move in and out of that place. So that's important. But that's what I see here with medium high density in the node area. Maybe not all high density, but a good portion of it, because we want people getting on over to the train, walking around downtown and so on. So yeah, that's what I have to say. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Another element about the Emeryville development, of course, is it's an employment center as well. And rapid transit is one of the real attributes of wanting to locate in Emeryville. Mr. Vice Mayor, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that just a bit, because just a little bit. I lived in Emeryville 40 years ago when I first moved out here, or plus. And Pam, yeah, and I remember what it was like. I think there was a store that sold exotic reptiles, and that was it in that parking lot. And that was all there was. And we used to walk over there, just to kind of walk around, and, there was nothing there. And the fact that they were able to build that up as fast as they did, and I know things don't happen overnight, but it happened pretty fast, where when we left there in 1987, I want to say, or 86, 87, they were starting to transform it then. And I think there was a jazz club they built there and a couple other things. And then all of a sudden, Bay Street just exploded. So, yeah, and maybe the town center is the place to go. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the town center, because we know what's happening to the malls in our country right now. But, yeah, I think that's a great model to look at, Pam. I'm not sure, how long it would take or how, but it really, I watched it happen before my eyes back then. It was pretty great. So,
Councilwoman Panduro, please.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just had two things I wanted to ask about. First of all, I do appreciate more so the mixed use, just so that we can bring in some more retail type things to that area. And I wanted to ask, does this take into consideration the plaza across the street where the Food Max is? Because I know that's an area of concern now. And I feel like it's going to continue to be an area of concern if we don't talk about it and include it in these plans. And I grew up on that side of town. So I remember when it was the Food for Less, and then we got Target, and now it's, we have BMW opening up down there. We have Embark opening now too. So I was just asking, I wanted to ask if that side of the street was included in this, in adding like high density or mixed use. So that was number one. And then number two, when you talk about mixed use near Suisun, where specifically would that be? Would it be closer to like the backside of downtown where like the Amtrak station is? Or I'm just a little confused as to when you say mixed use near Suisun, what that actually means.
Sure. So I'll just note that these alternative concepts are broad stroke. They don't really fall in at the parcel level yet, but if that is an area that you would like us to explore and include, we certainly can do that. And then regarding Suisun City, the intention of creating more of a mixed use area here, kind of activating this area here, I believe that it's currently have the existing use here somewhere. It's kind of hard to see, but it's, it's light industrial right now. And there are plans for some specific plan in Suisun in this area right here to the south of Railroad Ave. So the intention there would be to form a more intentional connection to this area, and then also promoting connections to the train station there as well.
And just add on to that, right now, currently within the adopted Heart of Fairfield specific plan, which on the imagery that Allison has up on the screen is outlined by the blue sort of hashed lines, shows that Heart of Fairfield specific plan area. And where the T is, which is the train station, immediately north of the tracks, and the freeway over crossing that goes right there, is actually under the specific plan zone for high density housing currently. We're in a sort of partnership with Solano Transportation Authority, Solano County, Suisun City, looking at that train hub as what's called a rail hub within the state's long-range rail plan. So within the state of California's 2040 rail plan, this Solano rail hub, as they call it, is actually slated for quite a bit of upgrade and improvement. And so as we're looking at that in partnership with those organizations, we're looking at an improved access across, better connecting back the two cities from a pedestrian, the friendliness standpoint, as well as opening up that area for an enhanced train station, which would also be the eventual terminus of SMART, which is the Sonoma Marin Area Rapid Transit, which would terminate here at this train station. So this would be the sort of the crossing platform, so to speak. In Richmond, you can get off of Amtrak and get onto BART to go into the Bay Area. This would be one where you could get off of Amtrak and get onto SMART to go out to the other North Bay cities and areas out into Sonoma and Marin counties. And so strategically with the state, this is a very important transit hub for them. And so I think as we're looking at this area, anything we can do with this plan that augments what's already in the Heart of Fairfield specific plan, or makes modifications if desired by council for the Heart of Fairfield specific plan, to really lean into those investments that we anticipate happening from a housing or mixed use perspective. That's I think the question here that Diet and Bhatia have raised for additional zoning in that area that plays into that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Tim, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. What I would prefer is alternative 2. And the reason is what we have downtown right now. You have the county building, you have legal offices, you have real estate, you have large lots, you have restaurants, you have a fairly large high school. And what I see is in the daytime, there's people down there working, and at night, those people leave. Now, they might walk across the street and go to a high-density apartment or a condo, but I see the downtown then changing at night, where you have more entertainment, more restaurants, things that will entice either people to stay or actually come back down there. School kids are gone, business offices are closed, and I think the proximity to the train station, people can walk, and as far as any retail, what I would like to see is things that you have to actually go into a store to buy. You can't get mail order. And by that, I mean whether it's a meat market or a small grocery store or whatever, something you're not going to order online, because as we all know, a lot of people shop now online. And I just think that plan for a daytime use, which is business, schools, et cetera, then plan for a nighttime use, which is eating and entertainment.
Other comments, colleagues? Thank you, Councilman Tim. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is David Lim, the city attorney. If Nora, since it's her second time trying to chime in, we can instruct her to either put her question or comments into the chat, or she can submit those in writing to city staff at some later points, and we can incorporate that into her into the comments for this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. City Attorney. Okay. Okay, thank you. We'll continue then, please. Any other comments?
Oh, sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, please, Allison.
Yep, so I was just going to say, if there are no more questions or comments about these options for supporting the Heart of Fairfield, I will move on to the next area for discussion, the Solano Town Center. So what we're proposing here in some of these alternatives is a more limited amount of redevelopment at the mall that would include mixed use housing and perhaps preservation of some retail, but more oriented to Front Pennsylvania Avenue occurring here. And then alternative 3 being our much larger amount of change happening there. And that can include housing, community uses, a park, jobs-oriented uses there as well. And we did hear from, it was divided amongst remaining as is with some experiential type uses. By that, I mean events in the parking lot, let's say, and others who did want to see a major type of transformation there. So I will note that among our youth participants, this was a popular concept to see the mall transformed into something that would be multifaceted and still serve as a major community hub, just in a different capacity and with different uses. So with that, I will pose the question, what scale of change would you like to see here at Solano Town Center? What components would you like to see as malls change into the future?
Councilman Tim, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And just to continue what I was saying about the other options is the mall has to change. I don't think the mall can survive. And I know people want to keep it the same, but how many shoe stores, jewelry stores, et cetera, can you have there? Now, there is room for whatever we're going to have 20, 30 years from now, but it does have to change. And I'm intrigued by alternative 3 in that you'll still have some retail, things that you can't shop for mail order, but a community gathering spot, and especially youth. Free, ever since the mall's been there, we know a lot of kids go there, and those kids are now adults, and they still want a reason to go there. But if you mix housing and jobs, you look at North Bay, right across the street, they have the twin nursing towers. It's become kind of a medical complex. I mean, what a perfect spot, whether the top floor, and I've said this before, is senior housing or housing, because they can walk, and like I said, medical services are there, and then you can branch out farther. Again, you could, if you wanted to, walk from downtown, but I think we need to concentrate on, if you're going to have high density housing, you need to have the services that would enhance it. And by that is a restaurant or a movie theater, and the mall is perfect for that. But the mall will not stay what we know today as a mall, especially in the next, I don't even think it's going to take 5-7 years, much less 30. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Councilwoman Moy, please.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, I read, I don't know, I guess it's been a month and a half or 2 months ago, that the owner of part of the mall, it's not all owned by one group, they're already looking at wanting to change that into housing and some other use in there with some retail. So yes, I think we are got to be prepared right now, actually, to start moving on that. And I also like alternative 3 for a number of reasons. I think that we need to have more community uses throughout our city. We don't have, again, I'm going to point to Cordelia, don't have that out there for them except for at the school. And we have meetings there, which is great, the schools. But also, North Texas, we're looking at putting a small center out there as well. And I think we need to have those kind of nodes around here if we're going to want to cut down on people driving around. So here would be a good place to have access things for parks for all ages, from more elderly people who might live in some of the homes there. But I don't think it should be just elderly people. Again, the generation that we have now coming up and all the way to 20 years ago, they want to live in smaller places. They don't want yards. So I think that you can put the high density housing in there, a mixed use, and you do also want to have some kind of jobs inside this area, because as Councilman Tim said, we do have a North Bay out there, and it's built, and they have a lot of things to look at in the future there and elsewhere. But, we want to make sure that we can have those people continue to shop or eat across the street. They're not doing that as much now, but it used to be very much like that. So that's what I would like to see. And a major transformation. I think it should be majorly transformed. And yes, there should be places inside and around the whole area for our youth. And also, our senior center, or we don't call it that anymore, but I do, is not too far away. But again, for people who live there, who might be 50 plus, you want things for them to do well. So, yeah, I like alternative 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues on alternative 3. I find it also, it's interesting that 51% of the youth that were surveyed said that's what they wanted, alternative 3. And I think that's really critical. I mean, we really need to look at what our young people want. And then, the fact that you read all these articles about how, the malls, I think it was said earlier, 25% of all malls in this country are probably going to close in the next years. That statement alone tells you if we don't do a major transformation, then we're behind the 8 ball. There's no doubt about it. I definitely think, I don't see the other alternatives as even, to me, any type of concept. I think alternative 3 is what we need. We need to do a major transformation to move our city forward. I think we have the land there. It's in the middle of the city. I had mentioned Emeryville before, and I think one of the consultants said maybe that's a possibility, that, type of development. So yeah, if I think this is, to me, this is the only alternative that I would go with. So.
Okay. Can we do a straw poll here for a moment? The fingers, please. 1, 2, or 3. I think it's 3. Thank you very much. The mall is ripe for experiencing a renaissance. You've got all of that land, and it can be better used. So there are lots of opportunities here. And of course, as a medical center, that's a big one. That's a big draw. The other idea, of course, you need to get people out of their cars and have them walk or bike in and out of that area. And I can see some high density housing in that same neighborhood. So.
Mayor, if I can make a comment.
Please, go ahead, Allison.
Thank you. Yes, I just put up my 3 fingers I'm also in agreement with my colleagues with regards to this alternative. More so speaking as what we call ourselves elder millennials. And I have all my siblings are millennials, and I can, just share that we don't use the mall currently, I think, as much as I used to when I was younger. And I think that just shows, the shift in the use of these kinds of spaces, and us needing to be, just being able to be innovative and creative and try to find different ways to be prepared for what's coming down the road, and just having that, at top of mind. I appreciate the use of, more green spaces, as I've heard a lot about, wanting more parks and more spaces for our youth to hang out. So I think, you look out there right now, it's just a lot of cement and a lot of space that's not being used that I think could be used for more appropriate things. Housing, obviously, we talked about North Bay across the street. And we have, other, the shops that are across the street as well that can complement that, whatever we do there. And it's right by the freeway. So I think there's a lot of positives around that area that we can definitely leverage what's listed here for that alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or observations?
I'll just share anecdotally, that
Councilwoman Bertani, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just share anecdotally that, I'm one of those, people who love the mall and, around the holidays and Christmas time and shopping and bags and all that. But, over this last holiday, I couldn't do that, because of my medical, injuries or whatever. So I discovered something called Amazon. Oh, my Lord. I did not step foot out of my house. I got everything on time. Everything was perfect. Everything was actually even early. And so, you know what? We do need a major transformation, because like all of my colleagues have said, with Chuck starting out, it ain't going to be like this no more. It's just that train has left the station. So I really like that we are in consensus around major transformation in that space with option 3. So I'm so glad that we can come together around that. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good summary. Any other comments? Please.
you actually have the un-Marilyn Farley, Dwayne Crown.
Dwayne, welcome aboard.
We don't know how we get confused sometimes on these, but thank you. This is a good discussion. The mall I find fascinating, and in dramatic contrast to anywhere else in town, you have very small number of landowners. So I'm wondering if there's been any conversation with the owners of the mall. Obviously in all of these big picture ideas of transforming areas, it's going to take a big capital investment. And in areas like downtown and the North Texas Street Corridor, I mean, all those areas you're talking about scores, if not maybe even hundreds of landowners, which is very difficult to kind of pull everybody together. I mean, we're the Marilyn Farley that's real, and I, we own some rental property in the heart of Fairfield, and we actually think would make sense to ask residents down there, or property owners, I shouldn't say residents, property owners, to have some kind of a lighting and landscape tax to fund capital improvements that are needed to bolster the area. But that, that's a lot of work. But here at the mall, you've got, again, limited property owners. And I would hope that the city, I don't think it's the job of the consultants at this point to do it, would be a big reach out, because they're obviously going to have their opinions, and they're going to want return on their investment, which makes perfect sense. But also having just a limited number of property owners, there's a real chance to make a change quickly, rather than the long process of trying to assemble parcels and put all that together. I mean, if something could be done fairly quickly that gets you heading in the right direction, an alternative 3 sounds good to me, but something close to that, working with a property owner and make a splash. I think that could help kickstart a whole lot of other things in terms of more intensified central development in Fairfield. So, thanks.
Great suggestion, Dwayne. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Dwayne, thank you very much for that comment. We have had some conversations, just so everyone knows, we have had some conversations with the current mall ownership. They've indicated that at this point in time, major sort of redevelopment of those properties is not something they're interested in. But it's not something that they would be disinterested in long term, given some of the sort of macroeconomic dynamics that have been discussed here, with the changing landscape in retail long term. And so, I think it's appropriate for the city council to consider, policy in looking at, a 20 or 30-year general plan, and what some of the aspirational goals may be, should that, sort of those macroeconomic forces continue down the path that, we think they may have opportunity or some likelihood of following.
Good observation, Mr. City Manager. Thank you. Okay, if there are no other comments, we'll go back to Allison, please.
Well, thanks everyone for your comments on the vision for the Solano Town Center. Our last area for discussion is North Texas. North Texas, as I mentioned, is a street that is primarily auto-oriented. We do a lot of driving around here. It's set back. A lot of the stores are set back behind large parking lots. But that is not to say that there are not a number of businesses and restaurants that are beloved by people of Fairfield. But we have heard concerns from people who live close to North Texas regarding safety, desire to see more pedestrian-oriented improvements to make this a street where it does feel safe to walk around from store to store. And then I'll just share that this was an area where there is a lot of community support for transformation along North Texas, with 44% of our survey respondents, a very popular concept among workshop attendees and our GPAC. And but we did hear from Planning Commission that there may be some room in between for transformation there, but really what they want to see is a vision for what will happen along this street. And I think what we can consider too is how development along North Texas also might help support transit improvements like a bus rapid transit line to help connect residents who live to the north and east and west of North Texas to the train station and to the transportation center. So the main question I have for you all for this area is what level of development you would like to see along North Texas, especially given that development can also mean more money for improvements, for public improvements, public realm improvements, bike lanes, and other improvements that we might want to see in this area additionally.
Comment, yes. Councilwoman Panduro, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question, Alice. When we talk about the bus rapid transit, does that mean, is it like a microbus situation or is it just our regular buses? Because I would love to, I mean, it would be great to have, how you're saying, access between downtown and North Texas, just like a microbus that would just go between, you know, up and down that corridor. Like, I think that would be that's what I envision, but of course all that needs to be developed. But that's my question. When you say bus rapid transit.
Yeah, micro transit or a specific bus could be an option. Bus rapid transit can also mean a bus that arrives at a greater frequency within every 15 or so minutes. It can also mean that the street could become reconfigured to allow for a designated bus lane where you would avoid all the traffic and it would move pretty quickly in that lane from north to west.
Okay. Yeah, so I would, you know, just being that I live on, you know, off of North Texas and I drive through here every day, it would be great to, I feel that a major transformation would be ideal. And having just grown up here, there hasn't been much change out this way. And so being able to have that as part of our plan and our vision, I think that this side of town definitely needs a lot of revitalization and just revisioning, a lot of improvements, a lot of opportunities out this way. So my nod would go towards the alternative too. Thank you.
Councilman Tim, thank you. Councilwoman Panduro. Councilman Tim, please.
Yeah, thank you. In looking, I like alternative two. And the reason is on the south end, you're anchored by a large high school. On the north end, you're anchored by Fairfield High, another large high school. We're in the process of putting in a PAL Center, city developed, first 5. And what's common in all this is youth, children, kids. If you go east or west, there's elementary schools. Residential is high density residential, obviously, is what I would prefer. And then especially to Councilwoman Panduro's questions on buses, you know, how can you get the kids to school going each direction? But you also have a little node where it is attractive to children and it's safe for children. For, 50 years, it's always been automotive and small shops. And we can still have room for them, but everything I think in this area, again, where you provide services that you don't have to drive to and the kids can get to school safely and then they have a place to go. And like I said, the north and south end is already done. We're starting now in the middle with what I just talked about with PAL and First 5. So I say continue that and just enhance it for the safety of the school children.
Okay, any other comments, colleagues? Councilman Moy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also mostly like alternative 2. I would add to that the nodes of activity. I think, again, whenever you're putting in higher density or not single family homes, you need to have activity for not only children, but for adults. Adults here in Fairfield, at least on North Texas, they used to be able to go to Boisset's. It was a fancy restaurant for around here. And I think we need to do that. This actually stretch, though, kind of is the area that I thought could look most like what Councilwoman Bertani's been talking about, because it's laid out there pretty flat. However, we do have to have areas where people live there, and also, take care of the youth and the people who already live down there and have grown up in these areas. It is, there is a lot of issues as far as it not staying clean, as far as people telling me all the time down in there, they don't feel safe. And there are a lot of transients that live in the area. Building this up will help with all of that. And of course, we're looking down the road. But I think we need to look at that area as somewhere where we have a stretch that could be built up just beautifully. It could be one of the nicest areas in the town. If you think about it right. And yes, the way things are built right now, it hasn't changed much since, I'm thinking, the 40s, yeah. And so alternative 2, go ahead and tear that up there. We do need a little, I don't know what you'd call it, but as they're talking about, a little transit thing. Although I'll just tell you, when I was younger, I would walk from Fairfield High downtown, no problem. I don't know if we really need, I don't know about that, but it doesn't hurt my feelings if you put a transit in there. I like to ride instead of walk. So, but the rest of it, I think it needs to be very, very transformed. It needs to be totally redone. And we do need to take care of and build on what we have already decided to do in the area. Also, crossing through there, you have the linear park. I don't know if we're going to talk about that in any of the alternatives, but that is an area that we have to develop as we've planned, for the last, 6 years, to build that up and make it so it's not such a high crime area and an area that people just want to go out and live in. Instead, we want people to enjoy it, everybody, and not be fearful when they go down there. So that's connected, of course, throughout the city. And it's here in North Texas, I bring it up because we are starting there as far as our development now. So let's not forget about the linear trail, the gut that goes through our town and does connect us to Cordelia. So that's it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Vaccaro, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up on Councilman Tim and Councilwoman Pandora, what they said. Yeah, I think we do need some transportation there just because times have changed. And I think that, it's needed on that street. That is a long street up, and I would not mind seeing that. And as far as what Councilman Tim said, you have Armio High School on one end and go all the way up to Fairfield High. And really, that area has not changed in a long time. What's happened a lot is there's been a lot of businesses closed, and the businesses that do come in probably are not the kind of businesses you want for growth. So, I think we have such a great opportunity. So what I'm pointing to is alternative 2, obviously, because we have such a great opportunity to transform that area because it really does have, so many possibilities. When I first came to Fairfield, 40 years ago, I think, I remember what it was like. And yeah, it hasn't changed much as far as the way, the way it looks has changed. But, as far as growth in that area, it hasn't changed. I remember when there were small businesses up where Walmart is and Liberty Church up there. There were like about 10 or 12 or 15 little businesses right in that area. There was an Albertsons. And it had a small town feel, but obviously it was a city was growing at the time. So yeah, I definitely think we need a major transformation. It just like I think Councilman Moy said that too. It hasn't changed in how many years. So yeah, I'm definitely pointing towards alternative two. Okay. So I agree with my colleagues.
Thank you. North Texas Street's a good opportunity for a diverse mixed-use environment. And you take a look at what the Fairfield Sassoon Unified School District has done at Fairfield High School. That really is adding a great enhancement to that whole North Texas Street environment. Councilman Bertani, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I agree with all of my colleagues. I think we need a major overhaul on North Texas Street. And I think that anyone who's paying attention in the city of Fairfield would agree with us. So alternative two offers us residential, mixed use, commercial, major overhaul. So I definitely agree with what everyone has said and would prefer alternative two, which offers the most change to that area. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Want to raise your hands if you're in favor of option two, please? Alternative two. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I have, this is Catherine. I have one more.
Okay.
Yeah. If we really want to think outside the box and you want transportation that moves through the city, why don't you go back to the linear park that used to be a railway and put a miniature, a small thing in there that can transport people from one area of the city to the other. It was made for that. It was a railroad at one time, as some of us old timers can tell you, and it's made for that. So it might be a good way to move people from one area to another. And since we're going to develop the linear trail to have nodes for education by the different schools down there, it would be a great way also for our children to safely move from one area to another instead of trying to find some other means to get across town, including parents driving them. I just want to try to keep that open. I'd like people to think about that. Because, we're talking a little bit about it here, but we could talk about really bringing Fairfield together, or at least these parts of it. That's one way to do it. You can still develop around that and have one of these things to move through there. So again, it was already laid out that way. So might want to go back to the future, back to the past.
Okay. I think we're all agreed that linear trail is an east-west corridor that bisects the city so beautifully. And originally, some of us on the Planning Commission years ago thought that at one point you could go all the way from Travis Air Force Base on the linear trail out to Cordelia. And that's still a very viable thing. So
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm glad that you planning commissioners are smart. We're just going to use your idea, maybe, hopefully.
Good. Thank you. So alternative two is our choice. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Hi, this is only going to take a minute. Following on what was just said by Councilmember Moy, I envision eventually having light rail that goes from North Texas to West Texas, but I also agree that linear park could be going back to the future, as she says, to have a rail that connects that way too. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. Any other comments? Okay. No other hands. Thank you. Councilwoman Bertani, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Catherine, thank you for that observation. I didn't know that. And I think that is a really great idea. So can we agree that, with alternative two, to look at, transforming the linear trail and making it a useful kind of transportation resource? Can we amend or add to alternative 2 to incorporate linear trail and transportation with the linear trail space? I think that's a great idea. And I had frankly no idea, so thank you for that.
Okay. Is there consensus, colleagues? Linear trail? Okay, good. We'll include that then too, also, please. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you all for those comments. And I will note that we are scheduled to discuss improving connections in Fairfield at our next study session. So that'll be a great segue. Those areas were all all the team was seeking direction on this evening. But if there are any other questions about the process or what comes next, I'm happy to answer those.
Just an observation. I'm so glad, Allison, that you surveyed the young people in Fairfield, particularly the students. That's an important element to keep in mind. Councilman Thomas, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say thank you to the team. This is a very good presentation and a lot smoother than our last one. So thank you very much.
Thank you. If there is no other business before this body this evening, I will close the meeting, please. And thank you very much for all of your great comments and suggestions. Thank you.